Hi everyone, welcome to this channel. Today, we're going to dive deep into something that's often puzzling but rarely explained in detail. Have you ever felt like you're being watched, even when you're alone? In this episode, we're going to uncover one of the creepiest stories you've never heard before. Eleanor Whitmore, a young woman born in Yorkshire, was the type of person who sought comfort in architectural precision. She adored clean lines, symmetrical corners, and the structured rhythm of well-designed buildings. When she landed an internship at Ashcombe and Hale Architects, a prestigious firm in the heart of London, she felt as though she had just stepped through a door into her future. The office building stood just a few blocks from the Thames, a towering Victorian structure that had weathered centuries but still held its regal presence. Its red brick exterior and limestone pillars gave off an air of authority and quiet age. But the moment Eleanor stepped inside for the first time, something in her body reacted, a sudden tension in her spine, a chill that crept up her neck. The air felt unnaturally dry, sterile in a way that had nothing to do with air conditioning. The sounds of high heels echoed on marble floors, yet something felt muted. It was as though the building swallowed sound, leaving only the weight of silence. Employees moved efficiently, heads down, always purposeful, but Eleanor noticed a strange avoidance whenever someone mentioned anything above. At that moment, she couldn't have known that what she had just stepped into wasn't just a company, but a story sealed into the foundation, quietly pulsing beneath the floors. Her first few days passed in quiet monotony, shuffling paperwork, reviewing digital drafts, shadowing senior architects during meetings. Everything seemed normal. Everything, except the elevator. The building had 8 visible floors. That much was clear from the elevator panel, which had buttons marked from G to 8. But old blueprints Eleanor found in the archive room clearly indicated 9 floors. It was even noted in one of the original building permits. Yet, in the firm's renovation records, the 9th floor was simply listed as non-operational, restricted. No one ever mentioned it. And when someone accidentally said the number 9, in a completely different context, conversations paused unnaturally, filled with awkward tension. People would suddenly remember a meeting, a call, or an errand. Even in casual conversation, that number was avoided like a curse. Eleanor noticed how no one ever used the stairwell beyond the 8th floor. There was no door access, no maps. It was like the 9th floor never existed. But she had seen the documents. And now, she was certain the silence around it wasn't ignorance. It was fear. On the 3rd night of her internship, Eleanor stayed late to finish a presentation draft. It was nearly 9 p.m. when she stepped into the elevator alone, ready to go home. She pressed the ground floor button and leaned against the wall, rubbing her eyes. The day had been long. As the elevator descended and passed the 8th floor, it paused. The lights inside flickered, not violently, but subtly. When they steadied again, the elevator didn't move down. Instead, it started going up. Slowly. She didn't press anything. The digital panel showed no number. Then, it stopped. The doors slid open. What she saw looked nothing like the pristine glass and steel design of the rest of the firm. The hallway was pitch black except for a flickering fluorescent light at the far end. The floor was bare concrete. The walls were cracked. Dust floated in the air. There were no welcome mats, no nameplates, no carpet runners. The air beyond the door felt wrong. Cold. Empty. She didn't step out. She couldn't. Her body was frozen, her heart pounding. Before the doors closed on their own, she heard it, a whisper, thin and fragmented, as though someone were exhaling through splinters. It said her name. Eleanor tried to shake it off the next day. Maybe it was a mechanical glitch, maybe her imagination had filled in the blanks. But her body remembered. The back of her neck ached. Her eyes kept darting to shadows. She couldn't focus. That morning, when she rested her eyes at her desk for just a second, she felt something brush against her ear. It wasn't wind, it felt intentional. Like breath. She opened her eyes. The office was quiet. The usual tapping of keyboards, the hum of a printer. Everything looked fine. But her nerves screamed that something wasn't. Every time she turned, she thought she saw movement from the corner of her vision, a quick shift, a flutter in the periphery, always just out of focus. In the hallway. In the reflection of the window. Behind her. Later that afternoon, while in the women's restroom, she entered the last stall. The place was empty. But in the stall beside hers, she heard a whisper. Clear. Drawn out. Raspy, like it came from lungs full of ash. It called her name again. She left immediately. But from that moment on, she knew, whatever had whispered her name in that unseen hallway had not stayed behind. It had followed her back. By her first week's end, Eleanor had begun to notice patterns in the people around her. Most acted normal, efficient, courteous, quiet. But then there was Abigail Thorne. An archivist, maybe in her late 40s, who always worked on the lower floors and never, ever, went above 6. Abigail had kind eyes, but there was always a heaviness behind them. Eleanor once watched her stand before the elevator panel for nearly a minute, staring at the buttons as though they carried a personal threat. On another occasion, Abigail was murmuring softly in the break room, Latin prayers, Eleanor thought. One afternoon, a power glitch caused a short blackout. The lights flickered. Some computers rebooted. When Eleanor passed the archives afterward, she found Abigail standing stiff in a corner, staring at the ceiling. Her lips trembled, but she made no sound. An hour later, Abigail returned to her desk as if nothing happened. Eleanor asked if she was okay. Abigail smiled, forced and thin. She didn't answer. But as she walked away, Eleanor heard Abigail whisper something, softly, like a warning or a confession she couldn't hold anymore. She said, the signs had started again. The next day, Eleanor noticed something wrong in the mirror. She had entered the women's restroom alone. The room was still, silent, every stall open, lights humming above. She washed her face to freshen up, hoping the cold water would pull her out of this lingering unease. But when she looked up, her reflection wasn't right. It was her. But not quite. The reflection blinked slower. Its expression was slightly different. A delay, a warping, like an old tape struggling to sync. For several seconds, the mirror version of Eleanor simply stood there, unblinking, while the real Eleanor recoiled in shock. Then, slowly, the reflection began to smile. Not a kind smile, but stretched, thin, unnatural. Like the mouth was remembering how to form the gesture. She stepped back, heart hammering. The light above her flickered. When she looked again, the mirror was normal. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something else had looked back at her. And whatever it was, it had just learned her face. The elevator began malfunctioning daily. Several employees grumbled about maintenance delays. But Eleanor knew it wasn't random. Each time she entered alone, the lights would flicker slightly, and static would crackle faintly in the intercom above. No voice, no music, just a constant, pressing hum. It sounded almost like breathing. That Friday, while descending alone, she heard her name again. But this time, it was followed by something worse, a sob. A choking, guttural cry. She gripped the elevator rails, trying not to panic. She looked up, only to see a red smear begin dripping down the corner of the ceiling panel. At first, she thought it was rust. But the color was too dark. And it dripped with weight. The elevator halted between floors. The lights went out. In that pitch-black silence, the breathing sound grew louder. Then something knocked, from inside the wall. Not like a rat. Something bigger. Something trapped. The lights flicked back on. The smear was gone. The elevator resumed its descent like nothing had happened. When she arrived at the ground floor, she ran. And for the first time since joining the firm, she considered quitting. Determined to understand what was happening, Eleanor began digging through the digital archives. She accessed HR files, intern records, anything she could find. Most of it was clean, until she stumbled across a corrupted folder marked only with the letter A. Inside were records of a previous intern from 2 years ago, Ava Kershaw. Eleanor recognized the name because she'd seen it carved faintly into a desk in the back of the documentation room, like a quiet mark of someone trying not to be forgotten. The record had been flagged as incomplete. No exit date. No reference. Just a sudden end. There were rumors buried deep in old email threads, references to incident protocol, whispered concern, hushed warnings to not discuss the 9th floor. The language was vague, but it was clear something had happened. And Ava had been involved. Eleanor searched Ava's name online. No LinkedIn. No personal blog. No trace. As if Ava had never left, or never had the chance. On Sunday, Eleanor returned alone. She needed to see the floor. Armed with an old building access card she found in the forgotten file cabinet, she entered the elevator and scanned it. The panel blinked, and for the first time, the 9 button lit up. The elevator began rising. Each floor passed slower than usual. Time stretched. The hum of machinery changed pitch. When the doors opened, Eleanor saw what she expected: decay, darkness, abandonment. But there was something else now. A door at the end of the hall. Not a room. A wooden door, untouched by dust, ornate, and freshly painted red. It shouldn't have been there. It wasn't there during her first glimpse. She approached slowly. The floor groaned beneath her feet. The air felt heavier with every step. As she reached out to touch the doorknob, a sound came from behind her, a low growl, like wind dragging through jagged teeth. She spun around. Nothing. When she turned back, the door was gone. Panicking, Eleanor ran back toward the elevator. The lights above her buzzed and flickered again. A deep cold wrapped around her body, making her breath visible. She pressed the button. Nothing happened. The elevator doors remained shut. The panel was dead. She turned toward the stairwell, sealed. A rusted chain looped through the handles, held by a padlock so old it looked fossilized. Suddenly, behind her, something moved. Not footsteps. Dragging. The sound of something scraping across the concrete, slow, deliberate, as if something was being pulled, or was pulling itself. Eleanor backed into a corner, trembling. The air was thick with rot. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Pale. Barefoot. Head tilted. Its eyes, sunken, but staring straight at her. Its face was familiar. It was Ava. But her expression was hollow. Not rage. Not sadness. It was hunger. Just before Eleanor screamed, the emergency lights died. Darkness swallowed everything. In total darkness, Eleanor ran. She couldn't see where she was going, only sensing the space through memory and instinct. Her fingers brushed against the cold, damp walls, the uneven surfaces snagging her skin. Behind her, the dragging sound grew closer, then stopped, then shifted to soft, rapid footsteps. She wasn't alone anymore. She passed empty cubicles, some overturned, some still strangely intact. One desk still had a lit candle, its flame unmoving, like time had been paused around it. She knew it wasn't possible. The floor had been shut for years. That was when she felt the breath. Right by her ear. Icy. Whispering a word she couldn't understand, followed by her name. And then, silence again. An oppressive, consuming silence. She ran again, only to find herself circling back to the same hallway, the one with the missing red door. The floor was looping. Like a maze. A trap. Desperate to hide, Eleanor forced open a supply closet near the stairwell. She slammed the door shut behind her and collapsed, panting in the dark. Dust coated everything. Shelves lined with ancient binders and faded blueprints surrounded her. One binder sat alone on the floor, covered in dried mildew. It had no label, just a symbol etched in pen, a hollow circle with 3 lines running through it vertically. When she opened it, she found only one page, a staff roster with 5 names. All crossed out, except for one. Ava Kershaw. Her name glowed faintly in the dark, as if recently written. And beneath it, a handwritten note. The chosen ones never leave. They only change form. As she stared at the words, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, despite being dead for hours. One notification appeared, a photo. It was a picture of Eleanor, standing in front of the red door. But she had never taken it. Suddenly, a loud knock came from the other side of the closet door. 3 sharp bangs. Then nothing. Then, a slow scratching sound, like nails dragging across the wood. Eleanor held her breath. The knob turned. She backed into the shelves, clutching her phone like a weapon, trying to make herself invisible. But the door didn't open. Instead, a whisper came from the keyhole. It wasn't threatening. It sounded sad. Tired. Like a voice buried under centuries of dust. And it said, "Let me go." The lock clicked, and when she finally found the courage to open the door, the hallway was empty again. The lights had returned. The elevator was lit. And the red door was back. This time, open. Eleanor stepped through the doorway. Inside was a narrow corridor lined with mirrors, each one reflecting not her, but a different version of herself. Some looked sick. Some older. Some covered in bruises. One of them, smiling manically, reached out from its side of the glass. At the end of the corridor stood a filing cabinet, glowing faintly. Its top drawer was half open. Inside, a single manila envelope marked with her full name. She opened it. Inside were photos of her on every floor of the building, including the 9th. Some taken from above, some behind her. Even one of her sleeping at her desk. She dropped the folder, heart pounding. And then, on the wall behind the cabinet, she saw it, a mural. Painted in blood or something like it. A face. A mouth. And beneath it, 5 names. Hers had just been added. When she woke up, she was in the intern lounge. Lights bright. Colleagues chatting. Coffee brewing. No one noticed her trembling hands. No one noticed that she hadn't spoken a word since yesterday. The manager walked by, nodded casually, and mentioned she had an important onboarding task later that day, on the 9th floor. Eleanor tried to protest. Tried to explain. But no words came. When she looked into the glass wall behind her, her reflection smiled back, too wide, too eager. And then, in a blink, returned to normal. No one believed what she saw. No one remembered Ava. Except her. And now, something else. The last scene fades to black, but the final sound is not silence. It's a soft whisper, 1 down. 4 to go. That was our story for tonight. Do you think it's just an ordinary tale, or is there something more to it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. See you, if you still dare to watch next time.